To be autonomous, you have to know who you are. Who are you? When you describe yourself, who are you? You've got to be more than just a woman, a wife, a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a worker, a friend. You've got to be more than that. What is the one thing that we all have in common? That we all are, first and foremost. We are a child of God. Exactly. We are all equals. We have all been created by the great Creator. We are all children of God. Do you act like a child of God? Sometimes I act like Red Skelton's child of God, mean little kid. Somebody might here be old enough to remember Red Skelton. When my autonomous actions can be destructive is when my character defects take over. You know, my character defects. Like, for instance, I have been known to rape the mall. You know, when J.D. would go out and get drunk, I'd say, how can you go out and spend money we don't have? But yet, when he would go do that, if he can do that, so can I. Now, that really makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So I would go and I would buy things. I would go on a shopping spree. You know, when a woman gets angry, women go shopping, you know. We go and we use shopping for a lot of excuses, you know. And we buy things that we don't want, that we don't need, and then after you get them home, there you've got them, and you usually give them away or hide them away from it, because it's like, what was I thinking? Why did I get that? I don't even like that. But why did I get it at the time? Because I was trying to make something out there make me feel good in here. You know. And God helped me if I had somebody with me, because then I had to impress you, and I had to spend a lot more money then. I had to, you know, I'd say, they would say, you never even asked how much that costs. And I'd go, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. And I couldn't. You know, I had been wanting a couch for years. And I had a particular kind of couch I wanted, a style of a couch, and I wanted it in a certain way, and I couldn't find it. And one day on my lunch hour, I had one of the girls with me from work, and I found it. And it just happened to be in the most expensive furniture store in Little Rock. Just happened to be there, you know. And I said, that's the kind of couch I've been looking for years. But I don't like the fabric. And the woman says, well, look at all these swatches. She says, that's no problem. We can order one from the factory. Oh. That sounds decadent. Sounds like my kind of thing. And so I picked out this crushed velvet print from Belgium. And I ordered the couch. And they said it would take 6 to 8 weeks. It was coming from the Carolinas. You know, it was a big brand name couch. And it's a very good couch. It's a very good company. You can't wear them out, you know. But see, that takes into consideration that if you never want to buy another couch, you know, but you don't get tired of that same couch. I'm going to tell you about that. But then while I was waiting on my couch, I decided it's almost time for my couch. I'll sell my other couch. Well, it just so happened they had a longshoreman strike up in New York, and my fabric was on the boat. It didn't get unloaded. And so I went for 4 months during the Christmas holidays without a couch. And my couch came. But you know, I never enjoyed that couch like I thought I was going to enjoy the couch. But I kept it because I ordered it prior to the program. J.D. got sober, lost his job, and I had to go without lunches to pay for that couch that I couldn't afford. And so I never was going to appreciate that couch to the degree of the money I had to pay for it, because it was ridiculous, you know. One of those kinds. So I kept that in spite of everything to show me what I can do when I get carried away, when I'm pissed off, or when I'm looking and I'm trying to impress other people. So I kept that couch. I had it recovered a couple of times. I kept it for about 25 years. And then one day J.D. said, let's get a new couch. And I went, oh, we can't get a new couch. He said, why not? I said, because I have to have that couch to remind me. And he says, I don't need the couch to remind me. He said, I want a new couch. And I'm thinking, I don't know that I can part with that couch. And we have a place at home called Wolf Street Center. And it's where the AA, it's sort of like an Alano Club type place. So it's in the old timers room over at the Alano Club type. And that way I can go sit on my couch and remember. You know, it's like, I just can't get it too far away, you know. There was something else, all that stuff that I bought all those years when I'm doing it out of spite and what have you. I could have saved myself a lot of money if I'd have had somebody to talk to. You know what my sponsor told me? She says, you're an impulsive person. You see it, you look at, you know, I'm the kind of person I would walk at the mall. And I would walk while the stores are closed because it's not good for me to walk while they're open. And I would walk past the windows and I'd say, gee, isn't that pretty? Gosh, that would be so pretty at the house. I need that. See, it would go from, isn't that pretty, to I need that just instantaneously. She said, you don't know the difference between a want and a need, you know. And she says, when you get something, and it's when you look at it and the next day, if you still feel that way about it, but most of the times you don't, here's the magic. Take it back. I never thought of that. Because that would mean that I made a mistake when I picked it out. I had to admit I was wrong if I took it back. And she said, that's right, you're wrong, take it back. And so then I really got off on doing that, to the point that over at Dillard's they would say, are you sure you really want this? They hate writing up the refunds. They really hate that, you know. And your mind works really, really fast. Really fast. I was talking to a girl I sponsored and her doorbell rang and she went to the door. She was gone maybe a minute at the most. She came back and while she was gone, here's what happened. Oh, I'm hungry. What would you like to eat? Oh, gosh, I'd love a bacon and tomato sandwich. That's what I'd like, a bacon. But you can't fix bacon. Why can't I fix bacon? Because you just cleaned your stove, and you know how bacon spatters. And once you clean your stove, really clean your stove, you never want to cook again. That's right. What you need is, you need a microwave, because then you can put the bacon between those little pieces of paper towels. I've seen them do it. That's it. And then you won't have to worry about anything. She's back. I said, thank God you're back. I just bought a microwave. Because see, my mind skips from thing to thing to thing to thing. Works really fast. Works fast. Did you know that when you're ego-driven, you are rarely going to have a healthy relationship? Because the ego won't let you. It's going to ruin things because you got to have everything your way. Now, I used to tell everybody when I was growing up, I was a natural-born leader. I either lead or I don't go. And the reason is I'm not a follower because a follower is at the mercy of the leader. And when you're fearful, you have to be in charge. You have to manage and control all of that. You can't be left at the mercy of doing what somebody else suggests. What if it doesn't turn out right? You know, that kind of thing. So that was the reason I'd say it was too scary. It's too scary to follow other people's directions. But I found out that people who are smart follow others' directions. You know, my sister and I went to Hawaii 8 times, and every time for the first several times we went over, I went on a tour, and we paid a lot to go on a tour. And so it would behoove you to follow the tour director on the tour. Because they've been there, they know where to go, tell you where not to go, and what have you, so that you get the best bang for your buck and you have a great memory and a wonderful time. And that's what the sponsor does for me in life. She knows, and she tells me what things to do, what steps to work, and assignments that she gives me. And I've learned that I need to follow those directions because my mind is weird. I don't think like normal people, whoever they are. I often think normal is just a setting on the washing machine. You know, like for instance, I was working a PI booth with a girl I sponsor one day out at the mall. And that morning before I left home, JD said to me, honey, the bird bath is cracked out in the back. Would you see if they have anything you can fix a concrete bird bath with? And I said, okay. So I'm out there at the mall, and we worked the PI booth, and we had lunch, and we're getting ready, and I said, oh, wait a minute, we got to go down to Sears and see if they have anything. So we went to the paint department of Sears, and as we walk in, this is what I heard me say. The young man approaches me, he said, may I help you? Yes, I'm a Sears personal shopper. I'm here to evaluate your product knowledge. If I were a customer and I came in and asked for a product to mend a concrete bird bath and or water fountain, which one of our products would you recommend? And so he got his little book and he said, this one right here. I said, you are correct, and I'll take a gallon. And I also want your name and employee number so I can fill out my report at the end of the day. And he gave it to me. I wrote it down, and we're walking out. And the girl I sponsor turns to me and she said, I didn't know you were a Sears personal shopper. And I said, I don't even know if there is such a thing. And she said, where did that come from? I said, I don't know. I heard it the same time you did. But I had to follow it through to see what was going to happen. You just never know. See, now my mind does things like that. You know, it just plays little games with me, and I just go along for the ride. I got to see what's going to happen at the end. Don't you ever have that? Okay, so you don't. Maybe I'm in the wrong program. Because some of the stories that I've heard from the other side, if it doesn't affect them adversely, if what your action is doing is not going to damage your relationship, and if it's what you feel God would have you to do it. That's the thing. God and my sponsor. JD's made some autonomous actions over the years that have really caused some problems in our relationship. The most major one was when he decided to put in a water garden one weekend while I was gone. And I don't know about y'all, but if you've read anything about a water garden, it's supposed to be about 18 inches to 24 inches deep. Ours was 5 foot. Using the alcoholic theory, if a little is good, a lot is better. And why did he find it necessary to do that and not mention it while I was gone? Was because he knew he might get some flack on the other side. So once I have it there and in place, what can she do? There's his deal. Well, I'll tell you what she did. She had a stroke. That's what she did. Because it rained. And what did he do with the dirt? Can I tell you how much dirt comes out of a hole that size? And he had seen too many movies. The one with Steve McQueen where they're shoveling out the prison and they're taking it and walking it out across the grounds. Well, he decided he would spread the dirt all across the backyard, and therefore it would just sort of dissolve and go away, and it wouldn't miss. But it rained. Have 2 poodles. I have pet doors. They come and go as they please. I woke up to my house with a river of mud. There was mud in the bed where the dog sleeps with us. There's mud on the couch. There's mud on the carpet. I have black poodles who are now brown. And I'm going, what happened? What happened? And so I go out and I look in the backyard and I can't believe it. I just, we're talking a hole bigger than this table and 5 foot deep, and I went, I was home since 7 last night. He never mentioned this. I'll kill him. I called my sponsor. She said, how long before he comes home? And I said, about 4 or 5 hours. She said, maybe it'll be enough to save his life. She said, first things first. And I said, what? She said, lock the pet door. Don't let them go out. See, because when I get upset like that, I can't think of the right order to put stuff in. She said, lock the pet door. Don't let them out in the yard. Don't try to clean it up. Mud doesn't clean up till it's dry. You just smear mud. Okay? Bathe the dogs. Thank you very much. Now, I have my dogs. Now, they're always going in and out on their own. How do you know when to take them in or out? Because they do I don't know. So every hour in the hour, we put the leash on, we go out in the front yard, and they're going, what are we doing out here? What's going on? What's going on? And then we go back in the house, and next hour on the hour, we're out there in the yard, you know. And in the meantime, I'm just sitting in the house crying. We're having house guests in 2 days. My house is a river of mud. The backyard is an absolute pit. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? So when JD come home, I'm out in the yard with the dogs. He takes one look at me, and I said, go in the house, look around, and when I come in, have a solution. And when I went in, he was sitting at our bar with his head in his hands going, oh, God, oh, God. I said, well, you give your heart to God because your ass is mine. I'm going to kill you. That's what I'm going to do. And he said, I never meant for this to happen. Oh, really? How come you missed telling me that you were A, going to do it, B, having done it? And he said, see, I was afraid. I said, well, there it is. So see, that's not a good autonomous action. And you know, I think probably when it was all over and done with, the thing that made me the maddest about it was that doing it while I was gone and never mentioning it, you know. I told him, I said, I feel like you're a little kid and you were doing it behind my back. You know, I said, you put me in the mother position again. And I said, I really didn't like that. And we went for we had war at our house for maybe 3 or 4 months because this was nothing that was going to go away in a day or two. And we were having a big yard party at our house the next month, and we always play yard games out in the back when you have a yard. And but you see, we had a rainy spring, so we didn't have a yard. We still had all this. And so my sister, my husband's best friend, decided her Al-Anonism was so good, she was going to fix it. So she and JD went off and they came back, and we had AstroTurf in the backyard for the yard party. Do you know how much AstroTurf it takes to cover a backyard? A big backyard, you know? And I told him, I said, his whole thing about putting the water garden in was saving us all this money. We could have had professional landscapers put it in for less than it costs for AstroTurf, trust me, you know. And so I finally, you know, I realized this is really affecting our relationship because I'm so angry and I'm so hurt and I can't seem to get past it, and I'm praying about it and I'm saying, God, what am I going to do? And God changed the cable channel. It's amazing how God does stuff. You never limit how God's going to work things out. And he put the Home and Garden channel on. And so I'm watching one day and they're talking about they're going to have a segment on water gardens. I said, excuse me while I puke. But I didn't turn it off, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching about all this stuff, and they're talking about the dream, and about a water garden takes 4 or 5 years to come into its own, for it to cure out and to look like the way the dreamer wants it to be. And here I've rained all over his dreams and made him hate it, but it was a miserable mess. And not only that, he had brought in all this marble and broke all this expensive marble up because he was going to have this mosaic, and it looked just like a swimming pool with a deck's what it looked like. It didn't look like any water garden I ever saw in a book. And not only that, it wasn't safe. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, the dogs play soccer. And I said, if they roll their soccer ball into the pond, I said, he says, they can swim. I said, for how long? Because you don't go into 5 foot of water, swim around with your ball, and then jump out. What do you jump out? How do you jump out? You can't propel yourself out of deep water like that. It's not like there's a shore that you can walk out. And he said, well, he hadn't thought about it. I said, well, I'll tell you what, if one of my dogs drowned, you're dead meat, and you just might as well take it to the bank, because my dogs are my kids. And I said, and I made him fence off the water garden, because it wasn't safe. And so I told him that day, I said, I saw on the thing, the main thing I have against, he said, well, what do you hate the most about it? I said, that would be hard. But I said, it's not safe. That's what I hate the most. Now, for years, I have traveled all over the United States and Canada, and I collect rocks, big rocks. And I had a cactus garden, and I had built this wall of these rocks that I have, every one of them, where they were from and everything on these rocks. from all over the country. And I said, I'm willing to give you my rocks to go around your water garden so that it won't be just run right in. And I said, I think if the dogs have to stop for the rocks, that they would not go right in the pond. And he told me he thought I was being overcautious. And then JD is a rescuer of turtles. And so we had a backyard full of turtles, and guess what? A couple of his turtles drowned in the pond. He had to see, And because box turtles are not like water turtles. They don't swim. They just go in and swell up. That's it. And so he said, you're right. So that weekend we took my rocks down around the cactus garden and we built the rock, a really pretty rock. And I said, JD, if you want, I can build you a waterfall. He said, how do you know how to build a waterfall? Because I was watching the Home and Garden show. So I built him a waterfall over there on the end of his garden. And see, now instead of it being a him slipping around behind my back thing, it became a we thing. And that is so important in a relationship, to be in agreement about things, to do those things and not just go off on your own and do something that's going to majorly change the complexion of your home. It would be like me going out and buying a whole room of furniture and never mention it to him till he comes in. It's not the courteous thing to do to one another. So, tradition 5. Each marriage or relationship has but one primary purpose: to serve as an expression of God's love. That is your primary purpose in a relationship or a marriage. You cannot express something you don't have. You can't transmit something you don't have. And if you don't know about the love of God and having experienced the love of God in yourself, how can you give that to somebody else? So we go back one more time. I heard a definition of love one time in a meeting, and it was this: love is acceptance, understanding, and tenderness. It doesn't strangle, grab, or possess. It sees the other person not as a god or an idol, but as another human being, possessing the strengths and weaknesses of all human beings. Love doesn't ask to be served, only when it may serve. Quiet, gentle, trusting. Love is comprised of affection and desire without anxiety. And I knew with every fiber of my being I had never loved anyone in that way. When I heard that definition, I knew I had never, because I had always been fearful. No matter if I loved somebody, I was fearful they were going to leave me, I was going to be abandoned. I had all this stuff. I had never loved for fun and for free, unconditionally, giving the love out and not demanding it be brought back. And this is what this is all about. And I realized this is how God loves us. God loves us. God won't do for you something you need to do for yourself. He loves you enough that He will let you make all of the mistakes that you need to make. And He doesn't say, I told you so. Instead, He's right there to help you one more time when you turn to Him for help. That quiet, gentle, trusting. So I had to define, what is God's love to me? If I'm going to give this to someone else, how do I define that? And the first thing is, God's love to me is unconditional. It's comforting, protective, kind, has a lot of forgiveness, strong yet gentle. It's trustworthy, it's constant, unwavering, it enhances everything. God's love never takes away from anything. It makes you happy, joyous, and free. God's love is wise, it's powerful. God's love is anything I need it to be at any point. And God has a great sense of humor. That's what God loves to me. And I have learned that God always goes ahead of me and plans in love. Because God loves you, He's always going ahead trying to make the road okay. There's a lot of times that I'll come to the road that He's made okay and go, I'm not going there, I'm going down here. And He'll go, I really wish you'd go over here. No, I'm going to do it my way. Okay, go ahead. And God's going to love me enough to let me go over there and fall down in the weeds. I have tremendous aftersight. I always know where the end of the runway is. It's behind me somewhere. It's like you see signs coming up and it's saying end of runway coming ahead, end of runway coming ahead. And until I am out in the weeds, I go, my God, I've overshot the end of the runway. It's like, that self-will, you just can't see it. Just puts little blinders on you and you just go zooming right off into the Neverland, But God's always there going, come on back, When you take God's love out of a relationship is going to die. Because self-will will kill a relationship. It will absolutely take over and it will kill. The big book talks about it being a tornado roaring through the lives of people. And that's exactly the way I've been all my life. When you are on your little course, to hell with the debris, you're going your deal. And that's like a tornado. It doesn't care about the debris it leaves in its wake. It's going its path. It doesn't care. When you only have one primary focus, your focus is only on one thing. Expressing God's love. Not necessarily what I want, but what does God want in this situation? So how do you know if you're in God's will? Here's the acid test. Is it working? If it's not working, chances are it's not. My will doesn't work. God's will does, I was given a tool years and years ago that was probably one of the most beneficial tools I've ever been given in the All-Night program. And believe it or not, it was about my mother. And this was the worst relationship of my life, not the one with the alcoholic. They say, well, but you tried to kill your husband. I said, that's true, but I wanted to kill my mother. I started with that when I was about 13 years old. My mother and I, after my daddy died, it was sort of like we declared war on each other, and whoever dies, the other one wins. It was like if she told me not to do it, I felt compelled to do it. I rebelled against everything she said. It seemed to me she was put on earth to make my life miserable. She always wanted to take all the fun away. Every time I wanted to do something, I just had I wanted her approval and I wanted her love so desperately. And when I saw I wasn't going to get it, I'd get her attention. And I knew how to get her attention. Did you know when somebody's beating the hell out of you, you have their undivided attention? Now that's pretty sick. But that was the need that I had to have that attention from her. And my mother would have been arrested today. But the thing of it is, if I'd have had a kid like me, I'd have killed it. And I recognize that, that rebelliousness that would never do what she said, always had to do what she did. And to the point, I can remember, like I said, I was raised on a highway, and there was one other girl and 11 boys on this highway. And so you became one of the guys. That was just the way you did to survive. And Mama made the statement one day, she said, don't go back on the sandbar. Well, see, our property went up to the Arkansas River, and I hadn't even thought about going to the sandbar. But when she said, don't go to the sandbar, God, it sounded good. I bet there's a lot of fun over there, because if it wasn't, she wouldn't be telling me not to go. So that means we got to go check it out. And so here I go with my gang, and we get back there on the sandbar. And it was wonderful. They have saplings on the sandbar. I don't know how many of y'all ever swung on a sapling, but it is absolutely one of the most fun things you can do. You get 3 or 4 of them, and they bend these little young sapling trees down. You get in the top of them, and then they let them go and just slingshot you, And you get to fly for a few seconds. It's just neat. Of course, there is the crash landing to be considered. But it's out there in the sand, in the mud, so, it's not too bad, except I broke my leg. Now, here I am, I'm back there and I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be doing. I broke my leg and I said, I can't be back here. And they said, what do you mean? I said, she told me not to come back here. I don't want to listen to her mouth. I don't want to hear that. I told you not to come back here. God, how can you stand that, It's just like, shut up and just go away. Just shut up. And I don't want to listen to it. So I got them, and so they drugged me. And so they drugged me, about, half a mile. And got me back over under a tree at the back of our property there, off of the sandbar, And then they went to the house and told Mama I'd fallen out of the tree. See, it's okay to fall out of the tree. It's just not okay to be on the sandbar. Now, I was willing, did I have to tell you how painful that was to have a broken leg, a compound fracture, and be drugged? it was less painful than listening to her. That was the kind of relationship I had with her. It wasn't good in any way, shape, or form. And so when I got in the program and I realized, my mother was getting pretty old, and I'm going, my God, my mother's going to die, and I'm never going to be able to have any kind of a relationship or any kind of a healing here, and this is not what I want. I want to do different. Now, let me tell you, when you become willing, God puts the teachers in your path. But I had to get to that point that I was willing. And so a girl came out of Missouri down to our group. She was only there for a year, but she had worked through a lot of mother stuff. And she began to give me little tips. And the first tip she gave me, I just wanted to smack her. And she said, accept your mother exactly as she is. Don't expect her to be other than what she is. I wanted a June Cleaver type mother. I did not have that, That wasn't my mother's experience. My mother had been raised in alcoholism. Her father died with wet brain from alcoholism. Her mother died of cirrhosis of the liver from alcoholism. Her oldest brother was shot in bed with another man's wife. He was drunk at the time, but he was my favorite. I liked the excitement, She had another sister that was in the nut house and died, and then she had this other sister that's still drinking even to today. And she had another brother that was drinking. So my mother was the only one that didn't drink. I think she needed to drink. Because let me tell you, when you're raised by a non-treated Al-Anon, that can be some of the sickest, neurotic stuff that you've ever been around. And it was when I was working with Alateen, I saw it from a whole different side. Alateen will give you a real an idea. They can see the alcoholic is drinking and what have you, but what in the hell's the matter with the sober one? What's the matter with the other one, Well, they're just nuts, that's all. Somebody else drinks and you go nuts. That's just the way it is. And I didn't realize my mother was suffering from this disease until a long year. But I realized what she had gone through. And I was willing to look at that, but I couldn't have any compassion for my mother. And so she said, accept her as she is. You have not lived the life she's lived. You don't have the experience she's had. Now, if you'd been raised in all of that chaos and confusion that she was in, the violence that she was raised in, where would you get love? How would you know how to give love to somebody? How would you know? You have to accept what she's able to give. So I began to work on that. And let me tell you, dreams die hard. The dream that someday we're going to have this wonderful, wonderful, and she's going to love me like I want her to love me, and she's going to tell me. You have to give up wanting all that. You have to give that up. And then she said, ask God to let you see your mother through His eyes. You see, God created your mother, and He loves her. So ask God to see your mother through His eyes. And then I was told, and in the meantime, we act as if until it becomes. So whenever you're around your mother, you act as a loving daughter. I don't know how. I'm not one, having never been one. How do you be one? Find somebody who is and ask them what they do. Okay? The most agonizing times were birthdays, Christmas, and Mother's Day. They just didn't make Mother's Day cards that said what I wanted it to say. You just don't say Happy Mother's Day, bitch. You don't say that. It's wonderful. I have a computer. I could make that card today. I love it. But that wouldn't be treating Mother the way Mother would want to be treated. That wouldn't be what a loving daughter would do. That would be what a very hurt, sarcastic, mean daughter would do, see? And so I began to do those things and to get those sick, syrupy, sweet cards that you just sort of gag, and just put your name on it and your sponsor mails it. You can't even bear to. And then the next year you're able to mail, it's a process, If you take the right action, you get the right results. It doesn't matter. People say, well, I don't know. My motive wasn't. And I said, I don't really care about your motive. If you take the right action, you'll get the result, and then your motive will change. I said, your feelings are going to change if you do the right thing. If you wait for your feelings to change before you do the right thing, you'll never do the right thing. Never. And so I began to do the things that I was told to do. And then one year, it took several years. And I would pray that prayer every time I would go to see my mom. And I would talk to my mom several times a week on the telephone. And before I started working on this relationship, when Mama would call, here's how the conversation went. Hello? Hi, Mama. Huh? Really? Because, see, Mother lived alone. She'd been alone all those years. She just talk. And so she never listened. She never once asked you how you were, nothing about you. It was just all about Mama. And she would tell you such important things as what she had for breakfast, how many times her bowels moved that day. My sister and I had an agreement. The first one talks about bowel movement, the other one kills them. We agreed it's time to die, when you know that. When we start to get like Mother, time to die, But Dorothy and Mother didn't have the adversarial relationship that I had. Because you got to remember, there's 16 years difference between me and my sister, 20 years between me and my brother, and 25 between the other brother. So I was the only child, basically, living there. And then Daddy died, and I was left with it. And so there it is, and I had all those years of hurt. And one of the things that Mother said to me when I was 14 is to think that I prayed to God for a baby and then had you. That's pretty hard to put on somebody who's just lost her daddy, the only person that she felt like loved her. Or things like, you're the biggest disappointment of my life. Now here I am. I am the honor graduate. I am the valedictorian. I am the straight A+ student. Did my mother ever go to any functions at my school ever? No. She was never there for anything. Was she there when I graduated? No. My mother was working. She was a dressmaker. She worked out of the home. My mother felt like if she wasn't working, she wasn't worth anything. And she was working to provide me with the education. So it was up to me, and she expected me to do all those things and to be all those things. And so you got no pat on the shoulder for achieving. That was expected. That she was doing the best she could. She thought at the time. And so here I am there. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about all this stuff, and I'm trying to take these actions, and I'm praying, God, if it be your will, please let me see Mother through your eyes. And then one fall, I'm driving in the driveway, and I look way out in the backfield, and Mama's raking leaves, and I realize something. Mama's short. Dumb, You don't know your mother's short. Mama came out to hear on me. Why would you not know your mother's short? Because every time you come to see your mother, you come as the little child, wanting that approval, wanting Mama's love. And when you're little, Mama's big. Always coming as a child. When did you ever come over here bringing something instead of doing the gimme like kids do? That is a big deal. And I'm looking at her and I'm going, oh my God, it's like, life's a potluck. What are you bringing? And it's when everybody brings what they have to the table that everybody shares, and there's enough for everybody. And instead of bringing, when you come, you always come wanting. And I did lots of things for my mother. And I began to say, but wait a minute. I had my mother's home air conditioned for her. And they said, and what happened? Well, she didn't want it. She was old. She didn't like the air conditioning. She was cold all the time. And she wanted to be able to see out. She didn't want the house shut up all the time. And so she wasn't grateful for the air conditioning. And here I was trying to be so nice. Were you really? Yeah, because when you come over to your mama's, it's hot and you sweat like a pig. That had nothing to do with you wanting to be comfortable. Yeah, it did, yeah. But I was also wanting it, but it was, okay. It wasn't anything Mother asked for, let me tell you that. And then what about when you bought her the microwave and she said, no, she wasn't putting food in there with all those little feelers and things going around inside of it. She still wasn't sure about Sputnik. But it was easier when you went over there to warm stuff up for her to warm it in the microwave, you see. So a lot of those things that I thought were so selfless, they also had a kickback from Mary Pearl, made life a little easier, a little more pleasant for Mary Pearl. And so as I'm walking back there to where my mother is, I'm just being bombarded with all of these feelings and everything. And it's like God opened my eyes and I could see inside her heart. And it was full of scars from hurt. And you see, I always felt like Mother withheld love to punish me. And I didn't see love. I didn't see love. And I thought, oh my God. When I got here, I didn't know how to love either. And I learned in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon how to love for fun and for free, without expecting anything in return. And if anybody was going to bring love to the relationship with me and my mama, it was going to have to start here. And so when I went back there, I did what I would do with one of you if you were a newcomer coming into our group. I would go in, I would say hello, and I would give you a hug. And so I asked Mama to put down her leaf broom, and I gave her a hug, and she was stiff as a poker. Because we don't know hug, we don't talk, we don't do any of those things. And every time I went over to see my mom, I would give her a hug or I would pat her. You know, there's great power in the human touch. Absolutely great power. And I would give her some kind of human touch every time I was around my mother. And I did that for a period of years. And I began to feel better about my mother. And I began to see her respond to that instead of all this bull that I had done before. And she wouldn't hug you, but she would stand up and lean in. You could tell she was enjoying those hugs. And when my mother would call, I would listen. Because you see, yes, she was telling me the same stuff she was telling me before, but she was telling me what had gone on in her life that day. That's all she had to share. That was her experience of that day. And I began to honor her by listening and paying attention to her. You know, we'll sit and listen to a newcomer hour on end to that drivel. Because we know we've been there, we've done that, you know. And we'll honor that person by listening to their cares and their concerns and their hearts and their harms. We'll listen. And I began to do that with my mom. My mom, like I said, was raised in that alcoholism. One day I went by there to visit with my mom. And my mom said, you know, I never understood why you became such an ornery kid after your daddy died. And I said, I was getting even with you, Mama, for not loving me. She said, what do you mean I didn't love you? I gave you a roof over your head, clothes to wear, food to eat. It was more than I ever had. You see, my mother had left home at the age of 13. Now, my mother had scars all over her body where her daddy would come in drunk and cut her up with a knife. He was a very cruel, mean drunk when he drank. When she was 13, he came in and he tried to rape her. She picked up a stick of stove wood and hit him in the head because she had no one to defend her. Her mother was drunk, her brother. And she ran away from home and she stole food out of people's gardens and she walked across half the state of Tennessee till she ended up in an alleyway in Memphis living in a box in the early 1900s. Wasn't fashionable to be a runaway. There was a boarding house on that alley, and there was a Jewish lady that owned that boarding house, and she offered my mother room and board if she would help her in the boarding house. My daddy was a lot older than my mother. He was the head of the Army recruiting office in Memphis, and he took his meals in that boarding house. And they met. And when Mama became 16, they got married in the parlor of that boarding house. Now, if you'd had to live like that, what would be the greatest gifts you could ever give a child? To never have to worry about a room, roof over your head, clothes to wear, food to eat. And see, those were the things that my mother, and see, I took those things for granted. That's what parents are supposed to do. I didn't realize it had been a luxury. It would have been a luxury in her life because she didn't get those things. The disease of alcoholism had robbed her of those things. And you know something, that day, they became enough. And I looked at my mama and see, I knew I owed my mama an amends. And I had tried several times to make an amends, and we always got into it. And that day, I just looked at her and I said, Mama, what can I do to make it up to you today for being the rotten kind of kid and daughter to you that I've been so much of my life and so much of it on purpose? What can I do to make that up, make that right between us? And my mama said, forgive me for not being the kind of mama you needed. And I said, Mama, I forgive you, but I don't know that you were not the kind of mama I needed. I just didn't have sense enough to see it. And my mama got up and she walked across the room and she gave me the hug. And she held me in her arms and she said, baby, I love you. I've always loved you. And that hole inside of me closed up. Because I was willing to do the work and to allow the God that y'all gave me to work in my life so that I could share that love with my mom. And there's something you just can't turn down, God's love. It is so healing. It is so forgiving and so wonderful, you know. You learn to be an expression of God's love by not doing something for somebody that they need to do for themselves. Sometimes that's the hardest kind of love. One of my grandbabies right now is struggling. She's got a 19-year-old son, and she's done everything in the world for him, and she's having now to put him out. And that is so difficult to ask that child that you love more than anything in the world that he can't live and behave the way he's behaving. He's got to move on. You give comfort and encouragement to your loved ones. That means give them positive strokes. Don't always find everything they do wrong. I can remember at home, my mama would say, go clean your room, and we had inspections. Yeah. I came from a military family. My daddy was in the military 38 years. And so we'd have an inspection, and Mama would look around the room, never once saying anything that was right, but you'd find the one thing that you didn't do exactly perfect, or that it was like the sheet wasn't squared perfectly or something. You know, she'd always find something. And that would just be so demoralizing, you know, because you never got any credit for anything you tried. So I try to remember and give people positive strokes. And, you know, the thing about it is, I can be my mother on any given day. I can be that nitpicky, you know, bitchy woman. You know, it's like one day you look in the mirror and, oh my God, kill me, I've become a mother. You know, have you ever noticed when somebody says you're just like, it's never anybody good? They never say, you know, you're just like so-and-so, somebody wonderful, you know. It's just some garbage you don't want to hear. You know, encourage people. Encourage them by bringing out their positives. And the thing of it is, when you go toward their positives, that gives them a desire to do more positives. When you keep constantly pouncing on the negatives, that puts them in the negative, you know. It's like there's two dogs on the inside of us fighting all the time. There's a black dog representing all your defects and your negatives, and then there's this white dog representing God and all your positives, and they're always in a war. And who wins the war? The dog you feed the most. You know, feed your white dog, feed your white dog. People really get off more on being complimented than they do being put down all the time. And I've learned with JD, you know, I love to compliment him when he looks nice. And he looks nice most of the time. You know, JD does things, too, that are so funny. Like I say, he's a very gentle man. And we're totally different in personality, but he's got a warped sense of humor. Now, see, mine's not warped. Well, I've got a quick wit and mouth, okay? JD's a thinker, and he's an actor. He does things, you know. And like, for instance, years ago, Charmin had a commercial, and they would write, don't squeeze the Charmin right on the toilet paper in the bathroom. So one day I'm going into the bathroom, I look and it says, I love you, on the toilet paper. You know, I have that little piece of toilet paper in my Odette book. You know, it's those little things like that that mean a lot. And then one day he wrote me a note and he said, this house doesn't have a cat, but it has a kitten. He says, that's you. He says, you roar like a lion, but you're soft as a kitten on the inside, if only people knew. You know, so a lot of people say, you know, I intimidate them, or I do this. I'm going, but I'm a tough marshmallow. You just don't understand. You know, you cut me, I bleed. You know, that's the way it is. And as a result, you know, used to when JD would get sick, he annoyed me. Sick men just really are hard to put up with because they're usually pretty whiny. Yeah, when JD's sick, he never has a cold. The flu. I've got the Hong Kong flu. I know I have. And it's real hard, because I can have the flu, bronchial pneumonia, and you're not cooking? No, I'm dying. JD went in one morning, he says, I've made you an omelet. Now, JD doesn't cook, so I'm already a little nervous. I take my first bite. I may never eat another omelet as long as I live. He didn't bother to cook the bacon first. You haven't lived till you bite into raw bacon. I mean, that's when you're already sick. Yeah, and he said, well, I knew it didn't look quite right, but I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. I said, you didn't buy it someplace else. That's what was wrong. And he said, can't you even give me credit for trying? See, there it is. And I go, well, yeah, you were trying. He was trying to do something, I look at Westerns sometimes till I want to puke, because he likes Westerns, I'm not that, occasionally it's okay, but I get really tired of seeing. I know all the words of every episode of Law and Order, I think there is. Because God knows you can listen to it around the clock on some channel or other, I know of everybody by name. It's like all old family members. Really hated when Lenny went. It's like being there for one another. And as a result, there's a new kind of intimacy in our relationship, We're closer than we've ever been together. In all the years, and you think about it, well, we've been together a long, long time. And we have special times together. Like, for instance, in the spring when the crappie were spawning, I told him, I said, Daddy and I used to go fishing together all the time. And I said, why don't we go down to the Old River Club? This is where my daddy and I used to fish. And the girl who does my house owns a place there, and she said, you don't even have to bother getting the boat out of the yard. She said, you can just come down, and we've got the boat in the boathouse. You just bring your equipment and come on down. And so we went down there one Friday morning, and we were catching fish. And I believe in cane pole fishing. It's the kind I did when I was a kid. JD's got this thousands of dollars worth of equipment, And so I'm there, and he's got the minnow bucket down. And I said, well, do you want me to keep the minnows up here since you're using the order? No, he said, I'm going to use some minnows too. I said, okay, well, then you're going to have to bait my hook, because I'm not going to walk to the back end of the boat every time I need a minnow. He said, that's fine. I'll be glad to. I said, all right. Well, we use catch and release. We don't keep the fish, and so that's fine. And so I'm in there. I'm fishing maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and I caught a nice big slab crappie. And so and he's still back there working on putting his stuff together. And I said, would you like for me to fix you a pole here? No. I have my equipment. Thank you very much. I said, okay. So I swing it around. I have my camera, and we take a picture of the fish. And, because see, we don't tell people about your fish tails. We show them, We show them. We got a picture. And so then in a few minutes I caught another fish, and I sent it back. Well, I've got about 6 fish. He hadn't got his pole in the water yet, because he's too busy taking care of me, putting my minnow back on my hook and all like this. And so I decided I'll have a little fun. And so the next fish, when I swing it around, I take it and knock his hat off with the end of the fish, And he looked at me and I said, oh, sorry. And of course he knows I'm playing with him, And then the next went down the back of his neck. It was just more fun. I had fish all over him, I said, well, I wanted you to feel fishy since you wasn't catching any. He told me the other day, he says, next time we go, I'm taking a pole. I said, you're going to catch some fish. And you know what we did? When my daddy and I would fish, when we'd quit for lunch, there was a little country store. And we'd go, and they had a big meat case in there where you had all the long, like a long roll of bologna or ham or whatever. And you'd go, and they'd cut you off a piece, and you'd get 2 pieces of bread, and they had a little condiment tray there. And you'd make it, and then we'd make our sandwich, and we'd go out and sit on the fender of that 49 Hudson and eat our lunch, and then we'd go back fishing again. And so when JD and I finished fishing that afternoon, about 1 o'clock, I said, let's go down to Cotham's. Well, it's no longer a country store anymore. They've made it into a restaurant, but it still looks like the old country store in there. They still have the old meat case and everything. But we went in there and we got us the hamburger, and I said, I ain't got a 49 Hudson. We can't go out and sit on the fender. Nowadays, they make plastic cars. We dent them all up. Used to, car was indestructible out there, But we got to relive that. We got to have that fun all over again. And it was just like Daddy was there visiting with us that day. And I'm so glad we get to do those things. That's just like the weekend after Thanksgiving. For years, we celebrate our anniversary is the 7th of November, but we wait and celebrate it Thanksgiving weekend when we have that long weekend. And we go up into the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas to a little town called Eureka Springs. And it's a real quaint little old town. It's all Victorian homes and stuff. And they have a lot, and we stay in a bed and breakfast. And we just really enjoy it. And I don't take my cell phone or anything. It's just like the world just goes away. As JD says, I get her undivided attention, And that's a very special time for us, those kind of things. And we find that we really enjoy that. We go cruising. We like to do a lot of things together. And we can do things together because we are courteous with one another, we love one another, and we enjoy each other's company. And it wasn't always that way. Did you know sometimes people are maybe doing the very best they can, and they need compassion and forgiveness, not being judged or fussed at? Because sometimes you're just not always there. I told my sponsor one time, she says, you're really judgmental and critical. And I said, this is wrong. Isn't it funny how the things that you think are your best points turn out to be your worst defects? And the things that you think are your worst defects or your weaknesses turn out to be your greatest strengths, It's amazing to me how that works. But anyway, I told her, I said, well, it's okay. Even the Bible tells you can do it. She says, what are you talking about? I said, well, it tells you a tree is judged by its fruit. And I'm a fruit inspector. She never thinks the things I say are funny. I don't know why y'all laugh at those. But I can tell you something. When you judge other people, you're going to judge you to a higher standard than you ever thought about judging other people to. It's not them judging you. It's you judging you that's going to hurt you because you're never going to be happy. Did you know if you're a perfectionist, you're doomed? Because you're never perfect. There's always room for improvement. You're always going to be a failure if you're a perfectionist. So quit judging yourself. You don't have the right to do that. Even judge wait till they have all the facts. Everything has to be in before they make a judgment. It's like I work for an attorney, and when you go to court, they tell you they want you to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So they know they got to really define it for you. Because sometimes we will tell what we think is the truth, but it's not the whole truth because we don't have all the facts. And we'll also add all of what we think and our opinion and everything, and that's not everything. That doesn't have anything, and they want to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And if you don't know it is truth, then you can't say it. And so that really limits you on that. Love and forgiveness are qualities of a higher power. That's not a human condition, God allows you to make all the mistakes in the world, and He still loves you anyway. People won't always do that. You got to give the person another chance to do better. Don't put yourself above God. And a lot of people try and do that when they refuse to forgive themselves for something they did. I'm one of these, I go, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I did that. And JD will say, believe it. And that's the truth, it's easier to forgive others when you can forgive yourself. And when you think about all those times you screwed up and you want to be forgiven, why wouldn't somebody else? Why wouldn't you be willing to give that to another human being? I have to allow JD to have his own feelings and not have to fix them for him. When he's hurt, I can't fix him. That's just like with this deal with his brothers. When he's scared, I can't fix that either for him. That's a job for God. JD will work that out with God. JD has a great relationship with God. And, when my sister crashed and burned in 1999, and the year 2000 was a really, really hard year, because I had lost my sister as I knew her. I had lost my health as I knew it. I found out that I have a heart condition. I had to make some adjustmts and change and do a lot of things differently. And then one of the girls I had sponsored for years had a pulmonary embolism, dropped dead in the emergency room. And then I lost one of my dogs that was 16 years old. 5 months later to the day, I lost the mate that was 16 and a half. And then later that year, we had the ice storms there in Arkansas, and I had a big aquarium there in the house, 75-gallon aquarium with fish I'd had 16, 17 years. And I went without power for 10 days, and the temperature was in the 20s in the house. It was all we could do to try to keep warm, and I sit there and watch my fish suffocate and freeze. It seemed like everything in the world that I love was being taken away from me. You know, it was a very, 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 very difficult time. It was just absolutely awful. And during that period of time, one night I was standing at my kitchen sink, and I just went down in the floor. And I'm just down in the floor in a ball, and I'm crying. I just think it's never, and nothing's ever going to be better. You know how you get, it's never going to get any better. And I got to the point, what can happen next? What can happen next? And JD got down in there in the floor, and he sat down, and he put his arms around me. He began to rock me. And he said, honey, God's, and I said, where is God, JD? I don't see God anymore. I don't know where God is in all this. And he said, baby, God is right here. And you just lean on my God until you can find your God again. What a loving, compassionate man, and these were strengths that I saw in him that I had never seen before, because you see, I always felt like I had to be the strong one. And I didn't have to, because JD had the God strength in him, And at that point, his faith was stronger than mine, because I felt like, it was just, I just couldn't believe what all was happening. And sometimes you have to go through those hard times. I don't understand it, But if anybody, you think you're in the program, you're bulletproof, and that life isn't going to happen, you're mistaken. I can't imagine what would have happened to me. I was going to more meetings than I'd ever been since the beginning of time. I'm going to meetings all the time. And it took every one of them, and I kept feeling like it's not working. But it's like a passage, it says, this too shall pass. In my office, we got a sign that says, now would be good. And it's like that, and I found out during that year, I didn't realize it, but I had lost my sense of humor again. It was so painful because I had been losing everything. I'd been losing myself as I had known myself for all my life. I had had to make all these changes in my life. And for those of you who didn't know me before, I was 100 pounds heavier then than I am now, And like say, it was like losing a half of a person. And you look in the mirror and you don't even see you anymore, And it was scary. It was just plumb scary. But I have to realize that God is there. God is there. I learned also to practice God's love in all the people that I meet. It's like I like to play with people. I really do. I love to play with people. At the grocery store, I was a real aggressive shopper. And I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be watching the alcoholic. And even if I watched him at the store, it's hard to have control over a practicing alcoholic. One night I was there and I'm looking around and he's half lit and he's right next to me and I'm moving down the case and he doesn't realize I'm moving down the case and he has a bad habit of slapping me on the ass and I heard this smack and a scream. And there's this little woman about 70 years old going, I beg your pardon? And it's like he was instantly sober and he's going, I thought you were my wife was right there and I am so sorry. And she looks at me, I said, I've never seen him before in my life. But what I would do, I would be there and you've got to get your groceries without going past the liquor or beer counter. You've got to maneuver your cart and everything because you get to where you just, every time you see a billboard or anything, a sign that says liquor, you want to go and just chop it down because you think that's the problem, And so here I am, and I was not kind to the checkers. I was very mean and hateful, and if they made a mistake, I let them know, and you're going too slow, and you're stupid, and I would just do really tacky things to the point where the manager would have to check me out because they'd all have to go to the bathroom or break when I would check out. So my sponsor told me to take God's love to the grocery store. She says, and you do that. And I said, well, how do I make an amends for that? She says, you be the best customer you know how to be. And so I always overdo everything. So I'm skipping through the aisles with my cart, throwing things in. Law, I'm in the grocery store. I'm shopping. It's a happy time. And so I get up there, and, it took a while. And then finally I'm up there, and they're checking me out. And over the next several months, I'm saying things like, your hair looks nice today. And I'm not just saying things, I'm making sure that I'm doing, and it's Christmas time. And I get home, and I'm going through my groceries, and there's a card in my groceries. And I'm going, my God, I have shoplifted a card. I don't remember getting a card. And I look, and it's from the Checkers and the Sackers thanking me for being the most positive customer and that they enjoy me coming to the store more than anybody. That's not possible. That's not possible. But there it was. And, I've kept up with a lot of those. And then there was this one with the little Sacker boy, and his name was Kenny Jones. And Kenny was a sweet little old boy, and later, years later, he became the manager of that store. And every year at Christmas, he would send me a card. And then one year, a few years ago, I got a card from him, and in it he had gave me. In the morning when you do your reading and prayer and meditation, I would write on the piece of paper what my marching orders were for today, what I got out of my meditation. And evidently one day at the store, he was having a hard day, and I had given him my piece of paper because I felt like, might lift him up. He had had it all those years, and he was sending it back. He had terminal cancer. But he wanted to thank me because he says, this has meant a lot to me. I've kept this all my life. You don't know how you affect people sometimes, You just don't have any idea. And it's okay. You don't need to know. You just don't need to know. God's going to take what you do, and He's going to bless what you do. And I have gratitude for God's world. I do that by not littering. God, I hate litter on the thing, And when I see litter, I stop and pick it up. I don't stop on the freeway, but I'm talking about... That's not a good deal, But if we have cleanup day at home or whatever, get out and help to clean up God's world. This is God's gift to us, And I can tell you, ladies, I don't know about the gentlemen, but women are pigs. You go into women's bathrooms, and especially I travel all the time and in airports and stuff. And it just, my God in heaven, what are they doing in there? And so if there's clutter or stuff in the stall that I go to, I take some paper and I pick up those things and I clean that up because I don't want to have to go into a place like that. And I want to treat these places like I treat my own home. And I don't believe people are living at home like that. I can't believe that you would live in your home like a pig. That does it for me. But I have gratitude, and I have gratitude for God's little creatures, It's like I can't stand cats, but I will almost wreck the car not to hit one, It's like I don't want to hit anything. I don't want to hit a squirrel. We got lots of squirrels, And squirrels are bad about committing suicide. Well, I don't know if you're familiar with squirrels or not, but they'll run out and get right in front of you, and then when you stop, and then they will look like they're going on across the road, and then when you start, they'll back up and you'll crunch. There they are. And I'll go, well, God, I did a suicide assist. I tried everything I could, He just did it anyway. And I tried to be a better neighbor, I had problems with the lady that lived on one side of me. I don't have problems with her anymore. I had a really good neighbor, John Henry, that lived on the other side of me. And John Henry was 97, and his daughter-in-law and grandson convinced him that he needed to go to a nursing home. John Henry was driving every day. He was taking care of himself, and it broke his spirit. He was the head elder of his church, and they put him in a nursing home 80 miles away from his home, where his friends couldn't go, and he never lasted more than 2 months. It just broke my heart. And then it was real funny because they rented the house out to a little black girl. She was a widow, and she had two little children. One was about maybe 3, and the other one was about 5. One morning I'm going out to my car, and they're very, very quiet little children, and the little one had escaped. You could tell the way he was acting. I know that look. And he was out there creeping around, and looking back to make sure she wasn't watching. And there was some kind of flower that Nina had in her yard, had a big bloom on it, and there were bumblebees buzzing around it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, and he's going to explore, and so he's looking, and about that time, all this pollen that's in the air, I let out, I am not a sneezer, I am a blow your, the walls, the paint off the wall sneeze, and I let out, achoo! And when I did, that kid ricocheted all over that yard. You see, God sent him a sneeze to save him from the bees, But it's nice, and I really hated to see her go. But she got a promotion on her job, and she was moving up to Fayetteville. And you can't help but want nice things for nice people, I've got a challenge now next door. Yes, the Moochies have moved in next door. They bought the house, and they don't want to buy anything. They want to use yours, the Moochies. And so this is a work in progress. More will be revealed. Trying to be good, but not do for them what they need to do for themselves. I've learned that my spiritual needs cannot be met by anybody else. I have to do the work myself. And when I do the work with God, then God does the work with me, and then we all get the benefit. I get the benefit because God's working with you. You see, and everything goes around. When you go into that meeting, no matter how tired I am, no matter how bad physically I feel, when I go to a meeting, when I leave, I feel better. Because there's something about the spiritual. When you feel better spiritually, it lifts you physically. It just does better for my soul. Tradition 6, a partner ought not be overly supportive spiritually, emotionally, or physically to the marriage or relationship, lest problems of ego gratification divert him or her from the primary purpose. In other words, you learn the difference between care giving and care taking. See, I was a caretaker. I took care of you. I have learned so much through my sister's illness. After my sister was in a coma for 25 days, and they woke her up, or she woke up, God let her wake up, whatever, Dorothy had to learn how to walk and talk and read and write. She had to learn all these things over again, And that's a difficult thing. Now, my sister was a brilliant businesswoman. She worked for Procter & Gamble 48 years. She was the first woman soybean buyer for Procter & Gamble in the United States. She worked with the Chicago Board of Trade. She used to do the New York Times crossword puzzle in about 10 minutes every morning with her coffee. Brilliant woman, absolutely brilliant. She couldn't walk, she couldn't talk, she wasn't continent, all those things. And what you want to do when somebody is like, you want to help them. You want to help them. And do you know if you do it for them, they won't do it. And I learned especially with my sister because of her life. See, she has no short-term memory. That if I do stuff for Dorothy, she can't do it for herself. She forgets how. So you have to learn that when you give someone, you give care that is needed, but you allow them. Like if I got up every morning and picked out Dorothy's clothes for her and put them on her, then Dorothy would no longer know how to pick out clothes and put them on. And we don't realize how we cripple loved ones by doing for them what they need to do for themselves. I didn't know that, Because, see, my self-esteem was based on my need to be needed. And the more you needed me, the better I felt about myself. And so what you do is you create need, you go in there and do. JD, I used to lay out all of his clothes for him in the mornings, It was a kind, loving thing, I thought. And then every evening when he would come home, I would have his towel and his washcloth and his clean underwear and everything in the bathroom for him, because that was a kind, loving thing to do. And then one day I forgot to do that. And he said, "What's the matter with you?" I said, what do you mean? He says, where's my stuff? And I said, well, I guess it's in the closet and in the chest of drawers. Why? And he says, well, why isn't it in here? Excuse me? He says, well, it's always here. I said, well, I'll tell you what. It won't be there anymore, and that way you'll know where all this stuff is. You see, I don't mind doing it, but I don't like being taken for granted. And see, the thing of it is, I had done it, and I realized I wasn't doing it for fun and for free. I wanted him to appreciate that. And when he didn't appreciate that, to hell with you. You know, I'm not going to do it for you anymore. You know, I took over. When he was drinking, I took over. I took over the finances. I took over making decisions. I took over all those things, and as a result, I lost all respect for him. All respect for him. And so I treated him like a bad little child because we had developed that became a mother-child relationship. And I told my little boy, don't go out and drink, don't go out and do this, don't go out and do that. And he did, and he'd come home and I'd whip his butt. It was pretty simple. You know? That's not the way that you live with somebody and have a very good relationship, you know, but we were sick. And see, when J.D. got sober and then he wanted to become a viable member of society, all these things that I had, do you think I wanted to let him touch a checkbook? No, you have to earn that, you know. And the thing of it is, I was afraid. I was afraid because J.D. always, sooner or later, drank again. And so I asked my sponsor one day, I said, how long will it be before this fear that he's going to drink again will leave me? She says, when you get ready to let it go. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, if you focus on your own recovery instead of his, it won't make any difference. He'll do what he has to do. You do what you have to do. She says, where's his guarantee that if he gets drunk, you won't kill him this time? I said, that's a good point. I must remind him of that. He was sober about 5, 6, 7 years one time, and he said, what would you do if I drank again? Now, that is not a good question to ask. Because that makes my mind say, what are you thinking? Are you thinking about drinking? Are you thinking about getting drinking? Have you been drinking again? What is the matter here? Is something going on? I mean, you know, this is how your mind goes when you hear a question like that. And I said, I don't know what I would do. We don't know, do we? You think on that. So I still don't know. I hope I would react better, you know, but we have no guarantees, you know, I mean. Life is what it is. So I still don't know. I hope I would react better, you know, but we have no guarantees, you know. I mean, life is what it is. So I still don't know. I hope I would react better, you know, but we have no guarantees.